Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. faced a tough Senate hearing today after last week's firing of Susan Monarez, the director, at least the former director of the CDC. It was not tame.
And if you're just watching the body language, we're looking at Elizabeth Warren right now and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Just these people are just going at it, and it's been really interesting to see how, and even some Republican senators have been grilling him pretty hard.
Yeah, he has faced deep criticism, and we've talked on this show this week. He has had 9 former directors of the CDC call for his resignation or his firing, and then just yesterday we found out that there were over 1,000 current and former employees of the CDC saying he needs to step down. So he has faced deep criticism from lawmakers as well, and ABC's Stephen Portnoy has more on that.
Appearing before the Senate Finance Committee, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. defended the CDC director's firing.
We are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at the CDC.
Susan Monarez writes in the Wall Street Journal that she was fired after less than a month on the job because she refused to pre-approve recommendations on vaccines. Kennedy insisted to the panel he didn't tell her to do that. But top committee Democrat Ron Wyden said RFK Jr. is dead set on making it harder for children to be vaccinated.
Kids are going to die because of it.
Stephen Portnoy, ABC News, Washington.
Ouch! That's what's getting awkward and problematic for this whole thing. We saw that 9 of his former directors resigned within the last few days. And
no. So 9 former directors say he should be removed, but it was when the CDC director got fired, then he had 4 people who were director of different departments who resigned. Yeah,
right. Finance Committee Ranking Chairman Senator Ron Wyden met Kennedy with some pretty fierce criticism.
Robert Kennedy has elevated conspiracy theorists, crackpots, and grifters to make life or death decisions about the health care of the American people.
And it seemed like a lot of the questioning in this committee was more statements than questions.
That does happen a lot, actually. But Senator Mark Warner did not relent in his grilling of Secretary Kennedy either.
Do you accept the fact that 1 million Americans died from COVID?
I don't know how many died.
You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID?
And that was only part of what they were dealing with here. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. certainly dug his heels in, and he was very animated as well. I'm just watching this. He didn't back down. And I don't know where we're going with any of this or what's going to come of it, but he was grilled by senators for some time. It started at 8:30 this morning and just ended a few minutes ago and went back and forth. Senator Bernie Sanders gave a passionate opinion about Secretary Kennedy and accused many of the senators of accepting money from pharmaceutical companies to fast-track the COVID vaccine.
Okay, you were already president. You got $1.5 billion behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million. Every Republican got corporate PAC money for the pharmaceutical industry. Democrats as well. Everybody is corrupt. But you? Is that what we're looking at? I don't think so. And I think the issue now...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
So he, RFK, as you mentioned, he defended his decisions and criticized the actions of the CDC during the pandemic.
We literally did worse than any country in the world. And the people at CDC who oversaw that process, who put masks on our children, who closed our schools, are the people who will be leaving.
So, it's interesting that he says that because the person who was just ousted, the director, Susan Monarez, she was put in place less than a month ago. She was a Trump pick. President Trump picked her, and she was praised by RFK Jr. in her confirmation hearings just a month ago.
Yeah, you wonder where we're going with the Department of Health and Human Services and specifically with the Center for Disease Control. They've always been very much a foundation of us and our understanding of, when do we get vaccines? What do we do with our children? How can we make sure that our society is safe? And there seems to be, from both sides, and I'm not going to blame RFK Jr. specifically, but that seems to be complete chaos right there in those departments.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people have used to describe the department recently is chaos, right? That there's, and in fact, I saw just some of the testimony as I'm looking at screens during some of our breaks, is even RFK Jr. himself calls it chaotic over at the CDC. Now, I think there's disagreement between who is causing the chaos and what the chaos looks like, but there definitely, I think there's broad agreement that there's chaos at the CDC right now.
So I didn't recognize, or I guess realize is the right word, that this was going forward. And I mean, has this been something that was planned for a while? He's just brought to the table right in the midst of all this controversy that's happening up at the CDC. Maybe the Senate said, hey, we need to get a handle on this sooner rather than later.
I don't know how long they have had this on the docket, but I know that they can and do call people in front of them to give an accounting on a regular basis. Yeah. And I think it's been clear, especially when they were over recess for half of July and all of August, that this was something that they were anticipating when they came back into session.
Yeah, RFK did dispute a claim by former Director Monarez that he asked her to pre-approve the recommendations of a vaccine panel that had been staffed with people who had, quote, publicly expressed anti-vaccine rhetoric.
No, I did not say that to her. And I never had a private meeting with her. So there are witnesses to every meeting that we have, and all of those witnesses will say, I never said that.
So she's lying today to the American people in the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, sir.
Ouch.
I mean, I think that's interesting, right? Where she was already saying before she was officially ousted, right? She said only the president can do that, and then the president did, but this was not something that was, I think, hidden, right? She started protesting at the beginning, saying, "Hey, look, you can't oust me," and he's just saying, "Well, she's just lying about why she was fired."
Yeah, we've gotten to the point where science, and who knows what we're doing. I mean, RFK certainly talks about, hey, I appreciate the science more than anyone, but what's happening here is it almost appears that we're not paying attention to science in the way that we have in the past.
It's a different approach, I think, to science. So one of the things that I saw, again, as we were watching some of this coverage, is that RFK Jr. said he wants everything to be data-driven, scientifically backed. And I think that people agree with that sentiment, except for what they're looking at and what he is saying is scientific is different than what other people are saying is scientifically based. That's one of the questions, is who decides the science. And it, for a long time, people, I think, felt like the data coming out of scientific research, peer-reviewed scientific research, which is considered the gold standard, that's the data. So, for example, with measles vaccines, we know that there was a dramatic drop in deaths related to measles in kids after the vaccine became widely available, right? We know that the numbers dropped, but some people are saying, well, it wasn't really from the vaccine. Maybe it was from this other reason. And I thought it was interesting that RFK Jr. said that Operation Warp Speed was a tremendous success. And if you remember Operation Warp Speed, that was the development of the COVID vaccine that began under President Trump and continued during the last year of his presidency in 2020.
We can look back on the way we handled COVID and second guess the way everything was handled then, in terms of not working, shutting things down. The disease continued to go throughout the entire country, through the whole planet, actually. And I would submit that if another pandemic like that arises in the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to handle it entirely differently. Yeah, maybe not better, but who knows?
As part of just not only did top leadership leave the CDC, but 20,000 workers at the CDC have been fired. So it's a little bit hard to see how we're going to refocus on American health.
Yeah. The Florida Attorney General just announced what they're doing about vaccine mandates.
Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Who am I as a government, or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body?
We'll discuss that
after the break.